Gentlemen, 133rd day of Russian invasion, the 9th year of the war. My name is Andriy Shevchenko. From behalf of Ukrinform Media Center, I welcome all the journalists who are telling the world about our fight for freedom. We are in touch with Vitaliy, the head of Mykolaiv Regional Military Administration. At Mykolaiv region, it is not that quiet during the last days. Vitaliy, which are the news for today? Hello, everybody. As of today, we have been shelled in Shirokino community, Pervomaysk and Dochakov. Kvitnevo and Pervomayska community and Nechayna. During the 24 hours, 2 civilians died, 8 were injured. As for the whole region, as for the number, well, let me rephrase. 573 objects are damaged or destroyed, out of which the residential blocks is 4,362. And as of now, we don't have power supply in 97 objects. The same concerns the water supply and water waste, so we are working on that. What else? Vitaliy, what about the victims, the people who died, where you had casualties? Where is that geographically? All of that is deeper and at the contact line. For instance, one person died during the missile when it hit the warehouse of agrarian industrial enterprise. There was grains or something, so the person died. And what was the aim of the occupiers in this case? Well, the hangar itself, where we stored the agrarian products. So they are attacking them. If we take the last week, we had more than 30 missiles. Lots of them were shot down by the anti-air defense, but mostly the aim was the House of Culture, just the House of Culture in one of the parts of the city, the agrarian warehouse, the building of Bashtanka administration, so all other civilian objects. So can we say that during the last week or days there is a certain aggravation of the situation? Because this conclusion seems to me rather obvious. Well, this is an obvious conclusion, and it's not only about our oblast, but all over Ukraine. And if we speak in jokes, the new head of their military in Russia, the occupiers, is from Roscosmos, from space. He knows how the missile, the rocket looks like. That's why he is shooting. So if he knows how the rocket looks like, then he's using it. And what about the aims which are chosen during these shellings? Can you make any conclusions? Well, their aim is just to intimidate the civilians, because mostly they are shelling against the social objects, infrastructural objects, and civilian objects, like the 5-storied building in the dormitory part of our city. Got it. If there are any questions, could you please raise your hand? Yes, I can see it here, please. Vladislav Oblast, Ukrinform. Hello. As far as people know, the Ukrainians know that one of the most acute problems for Mykolaiv residents, besides the main problem that is attacks from the Russians, is the water supply issue. The technical water is in the water pipes in Mykolaiv, which is exceeding the level of saltiness 7 or 8 times, as far as I know. So is there any prospect to improve this situation? Because this water can not only be drunk, but it can also spoil the communications, and we can have the consequences later. What are the prospects about the recovery of drinking tap water, or the drinking water at least, which had more than 50 million hryvnia allocated from the state budget? The best perspective as for the recovery of the drinking water supply is when we liberate the part of the region where we have the water supply from the Dnieper River. All the rest are being considered, but it can be done in the medium-term perspective, but also it is much more costly, because They use filters. We need to replace the equipment. We need to create new mainstreams. The situation is complicated. The money allocated for the drinking water are spent on the repairment and maintenance works, which led to the availability of drinking water. We have more of drinking water than the city consumes, but we need to deliver it, and the volunteers are helping in that. That's a hard question from the technical perspective. If I may, one more question from me about the business situation in the parts of Mykolaiv region which are rather remote from the contact line. What's happening there? The common language, how do they have business activity restored? And the question as the clarification about the campaign of harvesting in Mykolaiv region. What are the problems you're facing there, and how can you solve them as soon as possible, considering the current situation we are having now? And do you think, how can we look at the remote parts of Mykolaiv region which are far from the front line? Can you make the deeper processing of the agrarian products, at least to reimburse some of the losses Ukraine sees because it's impossible to export grains and technical crops? As for the business activity, it is increasing in the remote parts of Mykolaiv region, but you need to understand that the issue of economy and business is connected not only with our region, but altogether with the whole country, and with the countries from abroad, other countries. So the military risks which exist impact everything. The opportunity to ensure the cargo, to get the money, to provide logistical ways which unfortunately are cut off. We have activity, but it is restricted in our region. Most of all, we see the evolution of the enterprises which bring the goods. They try to have some of the products and goods produced with some value added for the restoration of the critical infrastructure. We do it gradually, but as for the harvest, people really respect and love their land, so they harvest in spite of the risks. The problem is that there is no price, and the logistics is very hard now as well, including the border with the Western countries, where it has to come, and where the ports are still working. There are long queues, and the high price, the logistics uses a lot of that. So the big enterprises which have the store of capacity in money, they put them into the stores and warehouses. Smaller enterprises are affected more. So we conduct negotiations as for the enterprises which could procure in our region, but I will repeat, the military risks really make the negotiations process very complicated. Does it mean that the farmers now are focused on the construction of some premises to store grains and to ensure themselves in this situation? Yes, including. I know the examples when the farmers are constructing and equipping the open platforms to preserve goods, but considering that the harvest level, the yield is lower, and we had them at the elevators, not only from Mykolaiv region, but from lots of others, because we are still the port city. So we have the warehouses. The question is the money, because the goods is cool, but we need money to go on the sowing campaign. Do you have any forecast in the figures? How much will Mykolaiv harvest in comparison with the average year? According to the statistical data, 2.2 billion ton. Million ton, 2.2 million ton. How much does it differ from an average year? It almost does not differ. The last one was very good as for the yield and harvest. It had 3.8 million ton. How do people live in Mykolaiv region? How did the economy change? What is working? Which profits and revenues can they get under such conditions? The state communal enterprises are working. The objects of critical infrastructure are working. The trade and logistics, the agrarian producers and manufacturers, and all the enterprises which are connected in this or that way with the military. What are the forecasts for the future educational year? What can you say now? How will it change? How will the beginning term change, or maybe any other news for Mykolaiv pupils and students? Well, it will definitely change, and there are some requirements for security, so we need to equip not bomb shelters, but at least some of the shelters in the basements for the children to go somewhere in case of air raid alarm. And it concerns the educational institutions in the radius of more than 40 kilometers from the contact line. So what's closer, it will work remotely, online. We don't plan to delay. We are getting ready to the 1st of September. So are people still leaving Mykolaiv region or coming back to Mykolaiv region? Well, the situation is dynamic and changing. Considering the increase of the number of missile shellings, people are leaving or coming back to Mykolaiv city for a short term. There was the tendency for the comeback, but the number of missile strikes has increased, so the tendency is the same. Do we have any other questions left? Could you please let me know if you have? If not, then I have the last question. How confident is Mykolaiv region? What are your estimates of the situation along the front line, which is so close to you? Mykolaiv residents are not that confident, but they are sure that they are right. And as for the front line, the military, the servicemen are working there 24/7, and it is hard, but they know why and for the sake of what they are working. There are some of the success stories which can be reported by the military experts. So as for our work, we have the full communication and interaction with the civilians and the military to provide the necessary equipment and the provision. The situation is the same as in the whole Ukraine. We are waiting for heavy armament and ammunition to develop our success and to liberate the territories which are temporarily occupied. This was Vitaliy Kim, the head of Mykolaiv Oblast Military Administration. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you. And our next briefing will take place at 3 p.m. Kyiv time. We are waiting here for Viktor Leshko, Ministry of Healthcare of Ukraine. Stand with Ukraine.